Robert Plank Show, episode 334. Entertain, educate, elevate. Build customer relationships, keep your business simple, and send daily emails with Ben Settle. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the show. We're talking right now to Mr. Ben Settle, and Ben shamelessly makes a living writing a quick email each morning and then goofs off the rest of the day, kind of like a bum who gets paid. So we're going to talk about copywriting and email marketing, all kinds of fun stuff. So Mr. Ben, how are things?
Things are going good, man. How you doing?
I am better than ever, super fantastic, can't complain, and all that fun stuff. And so yeah, I kind of feel like you're like more than a little bit out of my league here because like I've heard about your name for years about this sort of dude who sends these short daily emails. Is that a good sort of description of what you do?
Yeah, I mean they're not always short, but I definitely send daily emails.
Okay, cool. So daily emails and to sort of get people caught up because sometimes we have some of those younger generation and all they know are like the apps and the Instagram and Facebook. So can you kind of get us caught up on this whole email marketing thing and this whole daily email thing?
Well, it's funny because okay, so I've been doing this for about 15 years, but email's been around since I don't know 94 or something like 20 years,
Right.
And yet it's one of those things that it goes in and out of style. It becomes trendy and then it's not trendy. It just depends on which guru is promoting an email marketing product. And then when they all kind of like circle jerk on each other and then, okay, the next thing will be Instagram or the next thing will be Facebook or the next thing will be this or that. And so I noticed this over the last several years, especially since social media became more and more prominent, that it just cycles in and out of popularity. But I'll tell you what, it is, at least from what I understand, and a lot of other people smarter than me have verified this, it is the most profitable thing you can use on when you're selling online. And yet it's just, I guess it's just not sexy. But you know what? Those sales come in, it's pretty sexy to me. So all good.
Makes perfect sense. So like the marketing tool itself is not sexy, but the money that comes in is sexy. So isn't that sort of the same thing? And so and yeah, and I really like using like this whole email marketing thing. And sort of like you said, it feels like you could almost like look at what's popular today and sort of get a calendar for 2 years from now and sort of write in the calendar in 2 years in the future. And when 2 years pass, you could say, oh, guess what? Like the hot thing is social media or live streaming, and you'll be like totally a trendsetter because of these sort of these cycles. And so email marketing. When I've explained this to some people, this whole idea of like building a list and sending an email, a lot of times people kind of say things like, "Oh, well, when you say build a list, do you mean like rent a list or scrape addresses?" And when I say sending an email, they say, "Well, do you mean sending a newsletter?" So can you kind of set us straight, like this email list that you've built? Can you tell us how you've built it? And then when you say send an email, I mean, how much time are we talking?
Okay, well, I'm not. You could rent lists, but you don't not to do the kind of emails I do. That'd be very expensive, actually. Um, you rent lists to build a list. So, for example, there are companies out there who have, like their solo ad people, for example, they have a big list of opted, legally opted in names and all that. They're all legal and legit, and they'll let you mail their list using your name and everything. And that's a good way to get people onto your list or to sell a product. What I do is build my own list. I have a simple opt-in page or squeeze page, whatever, capture page, whatever it wants to call it. I mean, these are pretty common. Even like whitehouse.org probably has one, or they used to, where you get on a mailing list. And they're giving you permission to now send them email. And then what I do is just send them an email every day, which always has an offer of some kind in it. It's not really a formal newsletter or anything like that. It's just I make them look like they're personal emails coming from me. Like this is what I would say to a friend one-on-one if he or she was in my industry and we're just talking business. And that's what I'm talking about when I do daily emails.
Super great. So build your own list and then send these simple emails that are as if they're to a friend one on one. And for people following along at home, so there's bensettle.com. Is that a good place to sort of send people to get a good idea of an opt-in page? And is that a good place for people to sign up?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's my main site, and and yeah, I mean that, and you don't have to do exactly what I'm pretty hardcore about it in the sense that I make people click a box before they can opt in, saying I agree to get daily promotional emails from Ben Sutton. And I do things like that because I want to keep I want to keep spam complaints down. Two, I want to make like I use Google AdWords. I want to make them happy. I want to be as completely transparent as I can. And three, I find I get a higher quality person coming on there. They come in knowing that I'm not just going to sit there and try to bullcrap them. Yes, I'm a business. I have something to sell them. I'm not going to waste their time though. I will not ever do that. And I'll treat them good. And it won't just be, oh, here's a blatant sales pitch. It's I try to give them an adventure every day, something interesting, something to think about. It's not hard teaching. I don't sit there and go into my product and say, hey, let me tell you 8 ways to write a subject line, but I will talk about subject lines, or I'll talk about things related to email, or just psychology or sales psychology, persuasion, just whatever's on my mind on that day. And no matter what niche you're in, you can do the same thing. Just talk about what's interesting to your market, what's interested to the people in your list. What do they want to? What's relevant to them? And you become kind of like a talk radio show host that they look forward to hearing every day. And I don't know if you listen to a lot of talk radio, but it's a segment and then they go to a commercial. I mean, that's how they make their money. And email is a very direct response friendly medium, and so is talk. There's a lot of similarities between the two of them. And so yeah, you're kind of having a little commercial at the end, and I don't know, people like it. It's simple, and that's what I like. Dude. I am Robert. I am huge on simplicity, and it just does not get more simple than that.
Awesome. It sounds like it. And so that whole idea of like, you send your cold Google AdWords traffic to an opt-in page, you kind of have that checkbox saying, I'm going to be emailing you every day, and then you email them every day, and it sounds like you sort of blend an interesting story or an interesting sort of tease with an offer at the end. And that sounds like a great way to sort of manage those expectations, because I email every day as well. And sometimes when I tell people that I email every day or that they should email every day, there's sort of a lot of resistance, right? Because sometimes they'll say, well, I'm in some other niche, or they kind of make some comparisons, like you mentioned, like solo ads and some of these sort of churn and burn ads where, so there are some marketers out there who, email like 10 times a day, or when they email every day, they'll just kind of load up just, a bunch of like affiliate swipe files, or just kind of grab, someone else's emails and just kind of load it up with a bunch of crap. And so I really kind of want to dig into your special way of sending emails, because like I said, like when we say daily emails, I think a lot of people kind of get really afraid because they think about those sort of churn and burn lists. So I mean, so you kind of manage that. It sounds like by telling people ahead of time that they'll get those daily emails. You send kind of interesting stuff. And so, is there anything else to kind of sort of go against that usual stereotype of like the evil marketer that just pumps out a bunch of crap?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, the way anybody could feel better, they can rest assured, rest safe that I'm not talking about doing that. I'm against all that. I think not only am I against it because it doesn't work, but because it doesn't really respect the person. And here's the thing: for me, it's the first most important part of email. This is the first goal. It's the only goal I really have, other than obviously I want to make sales and all that. But this is the goal. It is to build a relationship with your list. And you can't build a relationship with them by treating them like they're marks or treating them like they're cattle. You got to treat them, like they're people. They got dignity. They got problems. Whatever you're selling, they have a problem that you can solve. So you got to treat them like that's someone that you can help. And I don't want to sound like all touchy-feely about it, because I'm really not. But that's just the way I go in on it. I build the relationship first. People will say, well, what about, should I throw all these benefits in there? I barely ever do that. I'm always just building a relationship. I'm building trust. They have a problem. I want them to know that I'm the person that they can, trust to buy from. And I'm not saying you don't put benefits and all that. I'm just saying my first goal is to build a relationship. And if you go in with that, you go in with that mindset and that goal first, everything else will take care of itself, because you're automatically going to do what's right by them. And it just all those problems kind of disappear when you go with that mindset.
So when you're talking about building a relationship, I mean, what does that entail exactly? Is it a matter of like, giving them some takeaways, or demonstrating value, or figuring out the problems? What sort of like sub areas are you looking for when you're building this relationship with email?
Well, it's all that. It's not all that every day, but every day is something different. And a lot of it is just knowing them and knowing what their problems are, and knowing what their goals are, what their dreams are, whatever. Every product is different. Some markets are easier to sell to than others. Like, for example, if somebody has a really painful health problem, so I've sold in like the niche for people who have prostate problems. That's way easier to do email with, because they have a very specific burning problem that you just talk about the problem every day, and they're You can never send them too much. So, for example, my this isn't a health example, but I was thinking recently, my dad has like I don't know 40 or 50 molehills in his yard, like these giant hills, molehills, and he's tried everything to get rid of these moles, and for like 2 years, and he can't. He just nothing works. I guarantee you, you cannot send him too much information on moles right now. He would listen to everything. On the other hand, if you're selling to, for example, like I do, business improvement, like I show people how to make more sales with email, it's not like they're waking up in the morning saying, God, I wish I had a better way of writing emails. Some people are, but mostly they're just looking for ways to build their business more. So I talk about more random stuff. But again, it's all about them. I have a daily dialogue with them. I know I get feedback from them all the time, every day. And I have an idea and I get a good feel for what's interesting to them and what's not. Sometimes they don't even know what's going to be interesting to them until I bring it up. And that's that's kind of a higher level way of writing emails, and people just starting out, don't have to worry about that. But this will happen over time as you get to know your list and you build a relationship with your list. So, for example, you have a good friend who has a problem, and you talk to that friend all the time. Over time, you get to know that problem as well, if not better than the friend does. And that's how you build a relationship, by just having that daily dialogue with them and treating them with respect and respecting their time and not sending any crap. I don't know if you're aware of who Ken McCarthy is, but he was like the founding father of internet marketing, basically. Been doing email since day one. And I remember he wrote in his book System Club Letters, which I thought was just this is so simple, but it's very profound in its simplicity. He goes, always ask yourself before you push that send button, does what I'm about to send them warrant interrupting their day for a few minutes or not? And if the answer ain't yes, then don't send it. And you'll know if it's yes or no, just because you'll be like, yeah, you're right. This is just like, I just used some swiped email here. This isn't really respecting them. This doesn't warrant them interrupting their day. I can do better. And when you come in with that mindset, you'd be surprised at how much people are receptive to that and how they want to buy from you. People look forward to hearing from you when you do it right, not imposition.
Awesome. And when you're explaining that, I mean, I think all the time about like, other marketers or other businesses that I'm glad to hear from on a regular basis. I mean, even Facebook and Amazon, they send, emails to me all the time. So I guess this email thing, is always working. And so, like clearly, like you said, like you should send something to people that is worth interrupting their day, and then you also said that some problems are more urgent than others, right? Like some things you can just kind of hit the problem directly. Other things maybe there's more randomness. So, in your opinion, like should everyone be sending a daily email regardless of their niche or their website or their offer?
Well, I have yet to see one that could not use and benefit from daily emails. I'll give you an example. I had this guy a couple years ago. He's like, well, Ben, what if you sell commodities? I sell socks, right? Like it doesn't get more commodity than that. Like, well, how do you write a daily email about socks? Well, I said, look, you're not. That's because you're thinking the wrong way here. You don't want to write about socks. You want to write about feet. Now think about all the foot problems out there. All these different people. Waiters have a very specific set of foot problems, and waitresses, construction workers, athletes, runners, people in sports, people in martial arts. People who just work outside all day, people who are on their feet all day regardless of what the job is, people who aren't on their feet all the time, they all have specific challenges with feet, like pain or whatever, or moisture or whatever the problem could be. What you do is you write about the problems. You don't write about, like, if the old adage, I don't know who came up, I don't know if it was Perry Marshall who said this, but if you're selling drills, you don't talk about drills, you talk about drilling better holes and ways to drill better holes. And that's the exact mindset to have with email. It's about them. You talk about them and the problem in ways that, however the problem affects their life, and then the product that comes in later. So I'll give another example here to make this a little bit more real. The late great Jim Camp, who was the world's most feared negotiator, that was the title everybody gave him. Nobody liked going against him. He was just one of the best out there. And he was big on principles, not necessarily tactics, but principles, and having a principle-based way of doing things. And in all of his years of doing this, and being a negotiator at the highest level you can get, helping the FBI negotiate, all these things, his big driving teaching was vision drives decision. So you have to build a vision before you even introduce a product. Now this is applying it to sales. If you build the vision of the problem first, it almost doesn't matter what the product is. I mean, I'm not saying don't sell a good product. I'm just saying that vision is the most important thing. And so, for example, I'll just use the prostate niche again, for example. There's this surgery called, and I apologize to any guys listening. It might gross people out a little bit if they know what I'm talking about. But there's this surgery called TURP, TURP, and I won't even say what it means because it's so gruesome. It's like medieval torture. I don't even know why. To me, it's very barbaric. But just take my word for it. It is the most gruesome surgery a man could experience. It really is. Like this. Think of the worst, most gruesome thing you could have happen to you down there, and times it by 10. That's TURP surgery. So I wrote emails about TURP surgery. Like, here's what happens when you have TURP surgery. Here's exactly the procedure. And then, another email would be, oh, let me talk about TURP. Well, here's some of the side effects of TURP. Sometimes it doesn't even fix the problem, it makes it worse. And you might be ejaculating blood for the next few weeks or something. You just go into this vision. And do I even have to have a benefit in that email? Do I have to say, now here's a product and here's the benefits? No, they're like, holy crap, I don't want this problem. And here's a link. And this guy seems to know what he's talking about. Let me check out what he's got. And so I can prevent it. Another example, and I know I'm using health examples just because they are the most obvious ones. And this isn't even selling anything. There's this lady who's on Facebook who I know. She's in like the MLM world. And she was complaining on Facebook in front of God and everyone. She's talking about her kidney stone that was like it was causing her excruciating pain. This went on for several days where she's practically keeping a journal of it publicly on Facebook. All this
Oh,
misery she's
jeez.
going through. It sounded terrible. And she wasn't selling anything. She was just out there complaining about the kidney stone. Well, I can tell you right now, and I'm sure I wasn't the only one. After a day or two of reading that, I was on Google, I was on Amazon I'm looking up like, you know, magnesium supplements and stuff, like something to prevent it. And she wasn't even selling anything. I imagine if she was selling something. But that's what I mean by building a vision up. It doesn't have to be a physical pain. In email, I sell how-to email stuff. I'll do the same thing. I can tell stories about people who struggle with email and how they write every day and they do everything that's supposedly right and they're still falling flat on their face and they're getting laughed at and people are leaving their lists in droves and nobody's buying. And I can tell that story and then I can go into my product. And so that is a real simple way of doing it, but vision is so important when it comes to that.
This sounds pretty interesting because if you kind of start with the problem and you combine it with vision, I mean, it sounds like it's easy just to crank out a ton of different emails. And it sounds like maybe if people are having that email writer's block, maybe it's because they're trying to think more in like, web page copywriting terms and trying to think like you keep saying about benefits when instead they should be talking about problems, because when you get into those problems it's easy to tap into like the emotional stuff, the frustrations, maybe they can relate to stuff, maybe like with that prostate example, maybe things are sort of bad but not as bad as they could be with all this this crazy sort of storytelling. And so to kind of give people a good idea of some of these emails that we're talking about. I'm looking right now at bensettle.com/blog. So am I correct in assuming that when you send these daily emails, do you also post them on this bensettle.com/blog? Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, when I write a new email, I do. Sometimes I recycle emails from a month ago. I get busy with other stuff, and then I won't put them back on there. But yeah, basically, if you see it on the blog, that was an email.
Okay, cool. So that way I'm scrolling through and we can just get an idea of like what these exact emails are sort of like. And so as I'm kind of scrolling through them, I kind of wonder like, do you have any kind of like method to the madness with it? Like, is there like a template? Because I've just noticed that like sometimes you'll start with a testimonial, or sometimes you'll kind of start with like an image or something like that. So I mean, do you have like a starting point or something, or is it just like you sit down and start writing?
I have a very vague. So what I have is I have a file on my desktop that has probably a few thousand ideas in it. It could be a subject line idea. It could just be a brain fart I had. It could be a very detailed note I wrote myself because I always have my phone with me and I get ideas and I just email it to myself. So I just dip in there and I say, oh, this looks like it could be interesting. Sometimes an email will be handed to me, like today. There was a singer songwriter. She gave me a testimonial, and I said, could I use this? And she said yes. And I just I turned that into an email. And people would say, wasn't that just blatant pitching? Well, in a way, but I'm also being entertaining about it. Like if someone read that email, they'd probably be most people I would like to think would be entertained by it at least. And that's another aspect of it is the entertainment side of things. This is where storytelling is natural entertainment. So if you can do that, that's fine. But that's a whole other thing. So here's another little thought for people to have. I don't think it's on Netflix anymore, but they used to have this series of short documentaries about various blockbuster movie film directors. So like people who have done really great work and have made, have had like Oscar not winning movies and all that. All they like did like 30 of them. One of them was with Mel Gibson, and I remember watching it, and he talked about when, to make a movie that really like wins everything and makes a lot of money, it needs three things. One, it needs to entertain. It has to be entertaining. Nobody is going to watch a boring movie. That's just number one. Two, it should educate. So if you think of his movie, like for example, Braveheart, right? At first, it's obviously entertaining. It also tells a story. Like it gives you. It's actually educational. It may not be exactly true to Scottish history and all that, but it is educating you. And then third, you want it to elevate someone's thinking on some level. Now, the third thing either happens or it doesn't. It's very hard to do that on purpose. But I have found the first two things, entertaining and educating, are very easy to do. And when I say educating, I don't mean like hard teaching stuff that's in your product if you're selling information. I'm talking about you could be educating them about a problem. You could be talking about a concept they're not aware of. I have an email coming out in a few days where I talk about the movie The Matrix. And there's a scene in there where Neo's watching this kid bend a spoon with his mind. And if anyone hasn't seen The Matrix, I just for the sake of time, I'm not going to go into it. But and he goes, try not to think. Bending the spoon with your mind is impossible. So try to think of it like this: that there is no spoon, because they live in this like computer generated world. So I've got an email about that, about how like writing is not real. Writing is just neurons and stuff coming out of your brain. It's not real. It's not substantive until you type it out. It's not typing. Writing comes from your brain. And so I do an email about that. It's just an educate. It's not a how-to thing, but it is informational, educational. It makes people think. Maybe it'll elevate their thinking to another level. Maybe it won't. I don't know. But if you do those first two things, you're already going to be so far ahead of everybody else, because most people are not. Most people either just send blatant sales pitches or they just do blatant teaching and they're afraid to sell. Neither one of those is really going to help you. You want to be able to do a little bit of both. And that takes time and it takes practice, but it's not hard to do. And once you figure it out, it's very simple.
Awesome, and I can definitely relate to a lot of that. Just as far as like some people are kind of too much of one thing, right? Some people are just here's a thing, here's a link, or they're too clever, I guess, with the story, and it's like saying a bunch of fun stuff, but then doesn't really lead anywhere and doesn't really sort of whet their appetite. And so what I'm kind of hearing from you is that by being on the lookout for those ideas, just from if you're out and about, or if you hear some kind of lesson, or you something reminds you of something in the movie, that takes care of sort of the entertainment part by kind of having that swipe file that you're kind of on the lookout for every day, and then you kind of connect that kind of goofy random idea to whatever your offer is, and if you can kind of work in sort of a aha moment or a tip, then that has that sort of the elevation kind of part of it. And so with this, and one thing that you mentioned in there is that when you have these emails, you said you have an email coming out soon about the Matrix. So do you get like ahead in your email sequences, or is it like a day-to-day thing?
It's really kind of personal preference. Sometimes I like to be well ahead because I have other things I want to do during the week. Sometimes I'll do them the night before. I do recommend people do them a day before, just so you're not under pressure, because nothing's worse than that. But some people like thrive on that. So at the same time, I would say nobody should do it. But me personally, I like to be at least a day ahead. And if I know I'm going to go travel for a couple of weeks, for example, and I don't want to be messing around writing emails, I'll write 2 weeks of them ahead. And it's not hard. And when you've done enough of them, when you've been doing it for a year or so, there's nothing wrong with going back a year and saying, well, let me just reuse this one. It saves you time, and you'd be amazed at how many times people, the second time, you'll get more sales of it than you did the first time. Sometimes it's weird. This is one of the reasons I don't even get bogged down in testing emails, because I've had emails make all kinds of sales, and I use them again a year later and they do nothing. Or I have an email that did nothing, but I'll use it again, several months later, and it'll like make all these sales. It's just a matter of showing up and being consistent and being there and having the right thing to say at the right time to the right people, which email lets you do masterfully because you're there every day if you do it right.
Awesome. That sounds like a really great way of doing business, and it seems like that takes out a lot of the guesswork and makes things not as complicated. Because I don't know about you, but like I always hear about all these people talking about segmenting your list and having all these like triggers for things, and I'm thinking I always hear all this talk of, if they open an email but they don't click, send another email. If they click but they don't buy, send another email. And I'm thinking, how many emails do you have to write to do that, just to have this whole spider web? And it makes a lot more sense to me, like what you're describing. Just kind of, you have with the offer in front of you, you have some ideas. You say, well, let me just kind of send something that's sort of interesting and mail that out. And so when you were mentioning about, sometimes you'll get like 2 weeks ahead, or you'll pump a bunch of these out. Do you ever think in terms of your emails as far as like a campaign? Like, do you ever say, like, I'm doing like a mini launch for a week or two, or is it just a matter of like every day you're just like pumping out the same offer forever?
Well, I have a very I definitely do it that way. I have one offer that I 99% of the time sell on the front end, and that is a paid subscription newsletter. And that's pretty much all I email about. Now, admittedly, I'm kind of a slacker, so I should be emailing those buyers something else. Ideally, this is the way and I learned this from a guy named Sean D'Souza, actually. It's not, and it's very simple. It's so simple, nobody wants to do this. And yet it takes away all the need for all these tags and all this other stuff. Basically, you have one main flagship product, and this is really, it's funny. I say I learned it from Sean D'Souza, but really I just learned this I also learned this from just the direct mail industry. This is what they do. This is where it all started, the billion-dollar direct mail. Sell them something, an offer. They buy it. Put that buyer now is segmented off list A and onto list B. Sell list B something else. So 2 emails a day is ideal. And people can have a very thriving business by selling something on the front end, whatever it is, ebook or product, whatever it is, and then selling those buyers like coaching or consulting or something really high ticket. I mean, it's a very simple business model, and it'll keep makes your income very consistent and predictable. And it's just simple. You don't need. I'm not saying people should never do the complicated stuff. There are certain companies that get to a certain level where they have a product line and they have a very specific way of doing it. That makes sense for them. But for the most people I've ever met, at least, it's just they don't need all this complicated stuff. All they have to is sell one thing, and then when they buy something, sell them something else. And I know that's so simple. It's like people just give me something ninja. Well, I don't know. To me, that's the most simple way of doing it, and it works like crazy.
And going back to what we were saying before, I mean, if simple makes you money, then why fight it? Why complain? Like, money's what's exciting, so why not just keep it simple? Even though that on its own isn't exciting, but then the money that comes in, that is exciting. So I mean, what's the difference? And so as we're sort of starting to wind down here, have you seen any other email marketers make any like mistakes that just really piss you off? Because I know that, like, for me, like, sometimes there's some email marketers where I've seen them send like the same subject line every single freaking day. Like, here's an update from John Smith. Here's an update from John Smith. And every day there's a different email content but a different subject line. Or I've seen where someone says, like, well, here's email number 3 of 5. And I'm thinking, okay, so I can't read email number 3. Let me go and dig around for email number 1. And I'm not even motivated to read email number 3 because I'm like, I know it's not going to be a complete thing. I'm going to have to wait for 4 and 5. So, I mean, do you see anything like that? Like anything that just sort of really gets under your skin as far as other people doing email marketing incorrectly?
It's a weird thing because I benefit from people doing it incorrectly. So in a way, it's like I don't get mad at it. I'm just like, oh, good. Now I got something else I can teach. But one thing, okay, I'll say this. I have a good friend. I will not name him, but he's a good friend of mine, and he does email every day, and he's been doing it a lot longer than I have. And yet he makes this very classic direct response mistake, and a lot of email marketers do this. I think it's a mistake, at least. And that is, there's this, I don't know if you want to call it a law or principle or rule, whatever you want to call it. And I'm not saying you can never break it, but I'm just saying generally speaking, is he'll put like 4 or 5 or more different links to different products in each email, which kind of violates the law of only sell one thing at a time. And I would suggest people should just focus on selling one thing at a time. If you're going to send an email out, you're better off just honing in on one thing than trying to get them to hopefully randomly click on 4 other different links. And it's weird. That's a very basic law of direct response, but people are amazed at how much makes things a lot easier and better and more profitable. So that's that would be my answer for that one.
And what's great about that tip is it's easy for someone to correct, right? And if anything, kind of going back to the simplicity thing, if someone might be out there and working their tail off, saying every day I got to have 4 or 5 links to my emails, and they might be listening to you now, and suddenly it's like, oh, well, now they don't have to write as long of an email. They don't have to do all this work. They can just send something short that's sort of interesting and gets their attention and gets someone to click. And that's really great advice because now people can kind of do less and make more money because it's more focused. And so, I mean, are there any sort of like things with email that you do that maybe are sort of things that you wish you did more? Because I think that for me, like for example, is I always forget to kind of ask my list questions. I love that sort of like, sending in questions and getting them to reply. So, I mean, is there anything like off the top of your head as far as like things that maybe you used to do that worked really well that maybe you haven't done, or things that you plan on doing more with your email marketing?
Well, mostly for me, I've never really emailed my buyers because it's a physical newsletter. So I just put offers in the envelope they're already getting in the mail. But I should be emailing them more. And I actually have someone who's going to be doing that for me. She's one of my top students, and so that will be remedied soon. But that's definitely, I mean, I can tell you right now, I've probably lost all kinds of money not doing that. So, I'm going to remedy that soon, actually next month. So.
And it sounds like an easy problem to solve, right? Just send some more emails.
Yeah, just like mail your buyers because they're the best list you have. I mean, your buyers list is the hottest list you have. Why the hell I haven't been emailing is because I haven't needed to, I guess. But I mean, I still send them offers, but it's through direct mail. But I should be emailing them stuff. So yeah, I'm working on that for next month actually. So a very timely question.
Cool. Well, I'm glad I was able to ask it in just the right time, and so that sounds like some really great stuff. And I mean, I completely understand. Like, there's only so much time in the day, and we all go for the low hanging fruit. But it's good, and it sounds like this problem you have. It's a very simple problem with a very simple solution, and it sounds like that's just sort of your whole thought process. Like, you and I have kind of made fun of all these people who it seems like they kind of give themselves too much work, or they're kind of a little bit off the mark as far as the emails are like too pitch heavy or too much of like the nice guy stuff. And so I really just like, as far as our conversation today, it sounds like most things can be solved in a very simple way. We don't have to do it with all kinds of fancy tools. Just send an email to your list every day, have an interesting sort of story or something to entertain them, educate them, and elevate them. And I want to make sure that everyone listening knows all about you, knows where to go, knows about your website. So can you kind of tell us about that, about like your websites, where you want people to go, and what you want them to buy from you?
Yeah, I mean, just go to bensettle.com, and if you give me your email address, and that's the whole reason I'm sending people. Give me your email address, and you'll get on my list, and you'll get my daily emails, and you'll also get a free issue of my email players newsletter. I've charged $97 a month for it. I'll send you a digital copy of the first issue. Now, I mean, it's a physical newsletter, but I'll send you a digital PDF for the first issue. There's 24 ways in there to start making more sales with emails. It's the most no-brainer thing. You can just apply and see if it works for you. If you don't want to give me your email address for whatever reason, you can just click right through to the blog. I've got probably almost 2,000 blog posts on there. I've got, I don't know, 100 and, I don't know, probably around 70 or 80 hours of podcast audio up there and some video content and all that. And it's all free. And that's bensettle.com.
Awesome. So everyone listening should go there right now. That's BENSETTLE, bensettle.com. And yeah, you know what, Mr. Ben, as far as this sending a daily email, I'm a huge convert on this thing. I heard about that in maybe 2006, 2007 from Mike Filsame, and I heard that he sent an email every day, and I started doing it, and there was a little bit of a reaction from my list, but kind of they got used to it pretty quickly. And back then I had a day job, and after I started sending out emails every day, I was able to quit my day job about a year and a half later. And a year or two, I dumped out every sent email I sent to my autoresponder, and it was something like 800,000 words. And the reason for that was every time I sent an email, I made money, and I kind of saw the light, right? And the way before was I would just kind of send an email every now and then, which might have been once a week, once a month. It was hard to kind of pick up speed. I wasn't always sure what to write because I didn't have that sort of writing muscle in there. And sometimes it ended up being sort of long winded or missing the mark. But what I love about this daily email thing is that it sounds like if you do it right, the way that you're explaining, where it's just some sort of quick messages. I mean, not too quick, but like just something that only takes a few minutes to write and kind of entertains, educates, and elevates. It sounds like it's a win-win for everybody because it's a great way to sort of stand out from all the noise that it seems like as things are more and more competitive. And it sounds like once your buyers kind of get trained and like you mentioned, when they're looking forward to that quick email every day, it's sort of like how people listen into talk radio. And you've also sort of alluded to that this whole idea that the more you do it, the easier it gets and it becomes more natural. And so I really like this idea of, making the best use of your time. And it doesn't make a lot of sense to me to, wait 6 months, wait a year. Why not send an email every day? That way people on your list can make that decision to either kind of buy or get off your list. So it sounds like a great way to make the best use of your marketing, but it's very simple. We're not talking about Infusionsoft or tagging or any of that fanciness. Just get them on a list, talk about these problems, talk about the vision, and then give them an offer. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. And so, you guys listening, to kind of pick up on the things you should do, like Ben said, you can get on his list, get his emails, see his past emails, videos, podcasts, all that fun stuff. bensettle.com. So I want to thank you so much, Mr. Ben, for hopping on and enlightening us about this daily email thing, and to make it fun, and to make it where even though you might send sort of a dud email, or for whatever reason it doesn't quite land with people, well, guess what? If you're sending it every day, then maybe tomorrow it'll be a better email. Or if you pick up one of those emails from last year, like you mentioned, it might have kind of bombed last year. You bring it back, and then it works. So the only way to know for sure is to keep sending out these emails. So thanks, Mr. Ben, for stopping by and talking to us, and I appreciate everything you had to share with us today.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. It was fun.
Check out the latest episodes of our podcast on the web at robertplank.com, and subscribe to us on iTunes at robertplank.com/iTunes.